Hey there. This is going to be a short video on Latin nouns. Now, almost everyone knows that a noun is a person, place, or thing. But the way that nouns function in languages, or the way that speakers and listeners tell what a noun is doing in a sentence in languages, differs quite a bit from language to language. In Indo-European languages, nouns tend to be inflected. That is, their endings change to show what they're doing in the sentence. These endings, along with word order, help determine meaning. So let's take a short perusal through nouns here. This is a really wordy or text-rich slide, which I realize is kind of it's a PowerPoint faux pas, but it's good to keep all of this information in one spot since you're going to be staring at it. Now, Latin nouns come with two of their elements, two of their aspects set, that is, they don't change. And you just have to learn these in the vocabulary. You can't intuit them, you have to actually just memorize them. The first is that each noun comes with a grammatical gender of its own. There's masculine, feminine, and neuter, and it's not really worth trying to figure out why some nouns are feminine and some are neuter and some are masculine, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In other nouns, it makes perfect sense why femina, which means woman, would be female, and vir, which means man, would be masculine. But overall, you just have to learn from the vocabulary whether a noun is masculine and feminine and neuter. You have to know that because you have to recognize or be able to place the correct kind of adjective with it. You can't have a feminine adjective with a masculine noun. It just doesn't go. So anyway, grammatical gender is the first thing that nouns come with, and they don't change. There are noun bases that you can put different endings on, such as amicus, which is a masculine friend, and amica, which is a female friend. But for the most part, each noun comes just with its gender assigned from long ago, and it doesn't change. The second thing that a noun comes with is it comes with a declension. And a declension is the pattern of endings that tell you what a noun is doing in the sentence. These endings indicate both whether the noun is singular and plural, and they also indicate what is called case. Case is a name for what role the noun is doing in the sentence, and that sounds like. Since that sounds kind of like fuzzy, let's look on the next page and I'll try to help explain that. So, declensions are the patterns of endings that indicate a noun's number and case. Case is the name for which grammatical role the noun plays in a sentence. You can't have, for example, a noun whose ending indicates it's the object of a verb be the subject of a sentence. The ending has to match its role. There are 5 cases, 5 roles in Latin for nouns to play. The first is nominative. Nominative means that it's the subject of the verb. So it is the thing that is the person doing the verb, the he, she, or it generally, or the they. So instead of he, you could have amicus, a male friend. Or instead of they, with the they could be birds in the plural. But in any case, if birds are to be the subject of the verb, they have to be in the nominative case as the noun. The second case is genitive, and it's when one noun modifies another. And in English, we usually do this with the preposition of, as in a bag of tricks or a bunch of poems. Sometimes in Latin, genitives also are used in situations where we use the preposition for, like love for your fellow human beings. That would be a genitive case because human beings would modify and restrict the kind of love. So when a noun modifies another noun, that goes in the genitive case. Dative case represents indirect relations, things that we use to or for to indicate, such as, was that good for you? Or, for me, I don't particularly care for it. Or, I gave a box of books to some students yesterday. These relationships that English uses to or for are represented in Latin by the dative case. Fourth, there's an accusative case. Accusative just means it's the object, generally of a verb, sometimes of a preposition. But so if you were to say, I see birds, birds would have to be in the accusative case because they are the object of the verb. Earlier, I referenced birds as the subject. They would have to be in the nominative case. So if you said in Latin, birds fly, birds would have to be nominative. They're the subject of the verb. If, on the other hand, I was to say in Latin, I see birds, birds is in the accusative case because it's the object of the verb. In English, we do this with word order. In Latin, it's both word order and case. Finally, the last case is ablative case. And an ablative case is when a noun is used in some kind of adverbial function, that it modifies or restricts or shades the verb in some particular way. So, if we were to say the poet gives a bunch of poems to the girl without delay restricts the way that the poet gives. That's going to be in the ablative case. Or if we were to say something like, I cannot live without chocolate. Chocolate is a noun, and without chocolate modifies the verb living. So in Latin, this would go into the ablative case. Often, Latin also uses prepositions with the ablative to indicate this kind of relationship. But just because there's a preposition doesn't mean that the noun doesn't have to be in the ablative. It can't be nominative, it would be the subject. It can't be genitive, it would be modifying another noun. It can't be dative because that would represent an indirect relationship. And it can't be accusative because that would make it the object of the verb. So it has to be in the ablative case if it's going to modify or restrict the verb of the sentence in some fashion. So, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. I've left out one case here, which you'll find in Wheelock, which is the vocative. Vocative is the case, is a special case for calling someone by name. And it's almost always prefaced by the exclamation O, as in, O Romans, lend me your ears. Not physically, but with your attention, of course. Although in some cases that might have happened. Anyway, the vocative case is one that is not frequently different than the nominative, and although it's going to be listed in the paradigms, it's not one that I'm going to insist that you learn at this time. It will become pretty apparent if it says O, and you probably have a vocative. And we'll point these out in the vocabulary when we go through, and it's quite easy to distinguish them and understand what's going on. So I'm not making you memorize them. But you are responsible for nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. If you don't learn those patterns, and it's these patterns that are called declensions, then you're going to be at a loss for what nouns are doing in a Latin sentence, because they don't occur, except in the very simplest of sentences, in the same word order as would make sense in English. All right, then. Understanding a Latin noun entails 2 steps. First of all, you have to learn the way that noun occurs in the vocabulary. The way that you understand which declension, that is, which pattern of endings a Latin noun has, is by its genitive singular ending. That's why Latin nouns in the vocabulary have 2 forms, as in puer, pueri, or amicus, amici. That second part indicates the genitive singular ending. Each Latin declension, and there are 5 of them, has a different ending for the genitive singular. So if you know the genitive singular ending, you will, 1, know the base of the noun, since sometimes the nominative forms of nouns are not actually the base, but the genitive forms of the nouns, minus that ending, is the base. So you know the base. The other thing you know is which declension it belongs to, and if you know the declensions, you understand what that noun means in any of its forms. So you have to learn the vocabulary, and then you have to learn the declension to which the noun belongs. And of course, you have to know the declension. Once you know those things, then it's pretty easy to determine what a Latin noun is doing in any particular Latin sentence. It's very complicated for now, but it will get easier. And if you learn the paradigms, it will get much easier, because it will be much less work to do in the long run if you learn these patterns initially first. Okay, good work to you. I'll talk to you soon.